Hey everyone, it's Matt C. Thanks for hanging out with me. We're going to be doing a little a whiteboard talk for this is a Patreon special request for February. If you want videos like this, you just gotta suggest something. If you're a Patreon backer, and I'll be putting these out on a at least a monthly basis. So far, it's been monthly. Maybe it'll be more, but yeah, we'll see. I just wanted to throw something out that I think it's been brewing. Those of you guys who know me, I've been saying it for years, but just trying to find better ways to say it. I'm also trying to find better ways to talk and write at the same time. So mainstream comics and indie comics, right? There's been a very special inflow. I like to call it kind of an immigration from the mainstream industry, or consumers of the mainstream industry, to consumers and producers in the indie industry. There's been a few mainstream folks who have gone indie lately, but it's mostly people who have become creators. Kind of grew up on mainstream for the most part with this CG immigration, Comicsgate immigration kind of thing, and it's two cultures. It's two industries, two kind of strengths and weaknesses kind of going on, and there's a lot of good things from an influx of people who expect who have particular mainstream standards on what by mains, it's not a pejorative term, but it just means, Marvel, right, and DC for the most part, and Image, or just, Cape stories, stuff that you found at your local LCS, just pretend that's what that says. Those kind of issue, 36 pages, 24 pages, 50 tops, floppy, stable bound, and well, we'll get into that a bit more. I can't really cover everything that's different and similar between indie and mainstream, but as far as the indie goes, and when I'm talking about indie, I'm talking about ever since the kind of the fade out, not quite the die off, but the very sure and well, like the measurable fade out of the webcomics, kind of early 2000s boom into crowdfunding. When I'm talking about indie, I'm not talking about something that you can find in your local comic shop that just is done by a slightly smaller, traditional mainstream publisher than Marvel or DC. I know that this is a legitimate term for those second and third tier publishers in comics. It's not a legitimate term in any other industry. You would not say I'm independently published by Bantam Books or something just because it's it's not Penguin or something, Simon Schuster, and everything else is indie. That's just a function, and it's something I just want to address lightly because we can't make this an hour-long video. Or you guys tell me. You're in the future. You tell me if this is an hour-long video. I can't tell yet. But the only reason we call this indie is because we're used to, in America, and only in America, only in the USA, is indie and mainstream. Does it mean we're thinking of two companies making mostly mono-genre content to be sold on the same shelves next to each other to the same exact audience. That's a very interesting. That creates opportunities and challenges too. It's a beautiful thing. I've never cared for Cape stories, and I've never cared for the industry from which Cape Stories derive. So I'm not going to pretend to be interested in that, but I don't laud it. I don't think that it's a crappy format per se. I'm already getting myself in hot water, but I got into comics as an indie thing. I got into it in the mid to late 2000s, so kind of late to the game. I got into it through storyboarding and through people there was an anthology boom. Let's go ahead and start putting stuff down. The sort of stuff that works well in indie. So anthology. Low. Wow, that's terrible, isn't it? Anthology. So, what's anthology? It's a bunch of, let's say 12 pages stories times, maybe there's 8 stories in there, and you get a big beefy book. It comes out once. Maybe that's the only time it comes out. That gets crowdfunded. It's kind of low impact on the creative teams, the respective creator teams. It's the expectation is spread out, I suppose. They only each creative team only has to put together. You understand what's going on here. But you get a big book, right? You get a big beefy book. That's what got me into it. I saw that you could basically tell really cool stories in short format, and you could compile them together. You could put them in long format. There's a lot of very famous comics that just regularly make 50, 80, 100K and have for 10 years on Kickstarter, for instance. That's the first format, and ever since Indiegogo's launched, we've seen it there too, which is awesome. But this is the sort of thing that can work. This is what the big approach is, I think. I'm already trying to make sure I'm managing my expectations for this video, but the big looks like this. It looks like something that maybe appeals to people. If, like me, you might have grown up on something more of a Euro comics kind of format. You're used to more like album-sized books, a nicer formatting than the 6.8 by 9.3 or whatever it is for standard issue LCS US comics, or you're used to or manga, for instance. That's the big beefy approach. So that's anthology. The other way to do the big is sole creator. This is really important. So sole creator. This is kind of the pure. This is going to be important because I'm gonna hit this. This is really what the video is going to be about, and we're gonna put the antithesis of that over here. Okay, that's coming. But sole creator is the purest form of indie comic. That's because it's usually it's not something that the creator has to pay for, right? They don't have to pay themselves per se. Maybe this is a side hobby. That's 99% of these things are side hobbies by people, and that's not considered someone trying to make it big by working as a side hobby, and they're hoping to get a day job doing this. If they are, they're hoping to get like a Patreon subscription kind of format for their pains, for their troubles, which is just as legitimate as working over here in mainstream, as far as I'm concerned, because whatever's paying your bills is legitimate when it comes to comics. So what's the sole creator doing? The ideal vision, it's always been this way from Hate Street 60s weird bizarro comics through renaissances in England, Franco-Belgian Tintin type stuff, Asterix, and weird stuff like R. Crumb over here in the States, Ninja Turtles, The Crow. It can be a 2-person team in some of those cases, like Ninja Turtles, but it's people writing and drawing their own comics, and it's no one's being hired. It's not being a hired out work. Do you understand? It can be a 2-person team over here in the mainstream side, right? But it's 2 people getting together over here, starting with the vision, not trying to pay themselves and getting paid on the back end if it's successful, because they're making it happen here. Over here, they're being hired to make it happen. That's just a function. That's not dissing the mainstream. That's just saying it's built to be a production factory, which is 100% fine. It's meant to be a bullpen. That's the nature of what's going on there. So sole creator, right? Purest form of this is they're writing and they're drawing their own comics. They're also lettering. I hate to say it, guys, but if you can draw a cool comic, you can learn to letter. There's some cool letters out there in the indie sphere. I'm not trying to denigrate their gig at all, but the famous ones I'm thinking about in the indie sphere started off as artists, and they learned to letter their own comics. And if they can do that, you can too. There's no reason you need to be paying prices. Let's start filling stuff out here. So bullpen, right? Letterer. That's a must, right? If your comic is legitimate, you have to hire everything out in the mainstream approach. If you're trying to wear anything more than one hat, if you're trying to wear one in the 10th hat, you're doing it wrong. In the vision here, you want to see your comic on the newsstand. That's the pure place you want to see it. You don't want to see it on a crowdfunding site. You want to see it over here on a newsstand with a cool title, and you want to see 15 names going down the side. That means it was a success. I know that feeling. I'm doing that with Wild Tales. I'm trying something different. I'm trying to make something that feels more like a LCS approach. So it's just cultures to me. Indie, mainstream. It's just visiting. I don't know. A different culture than my own. It's foreign, it's alien, it's unfamiliar. It puts me out of my comfort zone. I do appreciate that, but I'm definitely at home here. I'm native to over here, if you can't tell. So ideally, on the mainstream side, you have to pay someone else to do everything other than the one job that you're doing, which is fine. If you are the mainstream, and if you are a corporation with a corporation's budget and a corporation's access to talent and a corporation's access to capital and production, vertical integration, 80 years of paper mill contacts, you know what I'm saying. But if you're indie, there's a reason that the classic indie comic is sole creator, Xeroxed in some weird, San Francisco brothel or something, and just stapled to telephone poles. That it's because that's the cheapest way to make the comic, and that's why most comics are done this way when they're indie, because this takes a big dollar sign to produce. This takes a tiny dollar sign to produce when it's done ideally, right? That's kind of the point of this whole video. So let's just finish this out, right? We're just going to put what's ideally the mainstream ideal here, right? You don't want to be caught coloring your own inks. You want there to be an inker, right? That's a mainstream term, inker. No one talks about inker in indie unless they're using lingo from this culture over here on the right, right? There's no such thing as an indie inker. Unless they're speaking mainstream language. This is just called, drawer over here, and drawers can color. I think for I'll address that at the end. Letterer, colorist, inker, what? I think most people at this point, I haven't seen a lot of people come over to the indie sphere via CG at least that are trying to do pencils and inks separately. But let's put that in parentheses. So at least they're smart enough not to do that. But I still think that's kind of the ideal. We do talk about our favorite Marvel artists. This is 100% legitimate, guys, but we do talk about a lot of artists and which inkers did well for those pencilers, right? Like you might love Ditko, but you might not like Ditko with particular inkers. I've heard that sort of conversation a lot over the last few years, and that's a very legitimate approach, because remember, we're talking bullpen, we're talking about big corporation with 401ks for people at the very top and a lot of contract for hire for everyone underneath the top floor, right? Which is why, and then you got conventions, people sit, sad, poor artists who invented Wolverine, drawing characters that they invented but don't own for peanuts so they can afford their hospital bills as they slowly die in a La Quinta Inn convention center, while watching people pass them by for furry art. That's one big reason I think you'll feel, even if you love the mainstream industry, when it's good, it's very good, and when it's bad, it's awful. And when it's bad, it does this to people. If you want to minimize the pain that this man has felt, if you want to get him secure over here, he needs to own his own content, right? So that's we don't need to put that here. I think that goes without saying, but he needs to own his own IP in the indie sphere, proper indie, the way most people outside of the American comic book industry understand indie is not published by a publisher. It's self-published by definition. It's independently published. It's not Dark Horse. That's not indie in public parlance. So he needs to be able to own that so that he can make the most profit from it. And he needs to be able to learn to wear as many hats as possible. These are hats. Look like ducks or something. He needs to wear 5 hats if that's what it takes, so that he needs to be as close to Soul Creator as possible. I know plenty of people who are drawers who learn how to color really well. I know people who are more like painters who can color really well, who have learned to draw. You don't need if you don't, you can put anything in those pages of that comic. It can be literal paintings. Even the idea of spot blacks, I'm just gonna put that. Let's just, I'm already in trouble, right? Spot blacks, beautiful. I love spot blacks. I'm doing spot blacks for an upcoming comic. Look at that. See, we're not editing this. Okay, we're editing this. Spot blacks, guys. The reason spot blacks exist, it did involve both of these for a while. It's long since not. It's a legacy style, which is it can exist in any time in any period. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but it's a function of trying to mass produce content that can print very clearly on very cheap paper stock, right? In 2021, you do not have to do that. So that's one of the reasons why inkers, specialists, are valuable, but you don't have to use their expertise because it's not a conveyor belt. See, at this point, I'm just like drawing metaphors that I'm using. This is getting ridiculous, isn't it? What is that? That was terrible. Like a peanut brittle. You can do spot blacks. That's fine, but understand you can. If you're a talented artist, you can learn to do most of the things over here. You can learn to color if you can ink. Most of your campaigns out there, if you're an up-and-comer, it's going to be hard work for you to break $1,000. It's going to be you're going to be in the 1% if you are breaking 10,000. That's just statistically where you're at. I know individuals aren't statistics, but you need to manage your expectations. And if you're going to hit the sort of numbers that you need in order to fulfill successfully, you're going to have to minimize your cost and maximize. This really does deserve to be drawn. So you need to minimize cost. You need to maximize profit. Okay. That's the whole reason you're wearing multiple hats. It's the whole reason you're trying to get to this sole creator ideal, and it's the reason why this approach of trying to stuff the mainstream, which you love and you know and love, and you have every legitimate reason to know and love, into the bullpen ideal, and then port it over to the indie market. It's the reason why you see a lot of campaigns making a lot of money, and none of that goes to the creators, or there's still tons of out-of-pocket expenses, and you see a lot of failures. You see a lot of late campaigns because of mismanaged funds. It's not really I mean, if I really wanted to get myself in trouble, I'd say mismanaged funds means hiring too many people for your campaign. I think that's mismanagement. That's not understanding the culture that you immigrated into. It's not really a CG thing. It's just understanding the indie sphere. The only way you're going to be able to fulfill practically, logically, on at most a few $1,000s, which is what most people are going to be able to pull unless they have some sort of professional, years of professional experience in illustration at least. The only way you're going to be able to get there is if you can do most of the project by yourself, frankly. Or you can team up with one other person who can do that for you, right? Maybe you can find someone who you can share a vision with that you're not hiring, but you're coming in together and saying you're going to do like a 50-50 team thing, and you're just going to do absolutely everything you're going to do. It's not going to be an hourly wage deal, but it's going to be I'm putting my heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, and both of our incomes into making sure that we can pull this comic together by any means necessary. And we're both going to maybe wear as many hats as we can. You know, maybe some hats are bigger than others. They're going to be Some people are going to be wearing more hats than others. That's inevitable too. But you need to minimize how many people are on your campaign, honestly. If if you're making 20K, then by all means go this approach. There's nothing wrong with. There's a lot wrong with this here. I don't. This is what happens. This is bad mainstream. Good mainstream is let's just say it's this. It's what we drew here. It's just a nice comic where a lot of people got paid, and you got to see a lot of people's talent. And it's a really cool collaborative project that wasn't able to get. It's not something that really could have been put together by any one of these people, but it's a real team, family effort. Even that's really cool. That's very special. It's not something that a lot of I don't think a lot of manga can boast of that, and a lot of Euro comics still have, there's still distribution of labor, not as much. There's gradations, but at least in Europe you've got maybe it's a two-person artist team and a writer, and the writer is not infrequently also the artist, but that's not always the case. You commonly see both, just writer or writer plus artist, and in manga it's you can see just writer, and you can see writer and artist a lot too. Both are common. They usually don't have a colorist as an issue there, but you don't see as much penciler, inker, color, letterist, all that stuff on the side, and 3 editors nowadays. That's all cool if you want to do the big tent mainstream thing, and if you want to pretend like you're in the mainstream over in the indie sphere, you better you better have a raise of 20K. That's sorry. If you got 19K, it's not happening. If you got 20K, you can play this game. That's cool. If you have less than 20K, you need to aim for sole creator. Okay? You need to learn you need to put on your big boy pants, big girl pants. You grew up enough to learn how to draw in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, and tell creative visual stories that are interesting and expressive and communicative to wide audiences. You can learn how to letter your own comics. That's that. I'm sorry, you can. Okay. And you're going to save yourself, on average, maybe $20 per page. Okay. And if you're doing, a 50-page comic, and that's $20 per page, that's $1,000, right? You just save your campaign $1,000 by learning how to do it yourself. And most of our campaigns are not being critiqued on the lettering. You can learn how to do it well. There are hundreds of hours of YouTube videos of people telling you, professional letterers telling you, people who used to be who are artists who learn how to letter their own comics, telling you, you're an artist, you can learn how to letter your own comics. Here's how. Save yourself $1,000, okay? I'm just trying to help you, all right? I'm not shitting on anyone. And learn how to, just kind of minimize the impact on the number that you have to raise. So that's basically all I have. This is my rant. This is my angry rant. I might do more of these whiteboard sort of things because it keeps me focused. I feel like I can talk visually when I do this sort of thing, and we get a funny, messy, whiteboard at the end. But that's kind of I guess that's all I wanted to say. I want to see more campaigns succeed. I really hate to see campaigns raise, $4,000 and not be able to fulfill. That really breaks my heart, because that tells me that they've immigrated to the indie sphere, but they're it's like they're trying to take like a wagon and they've stuffed it with like 1,000 pounds of useless crap that was very valuable when they were over here. It's not going to help them do anything over here. Part of that is I'd say the number one issue is this bullpen idea of distributing, being legitimate by hiring out every single task and paying people good money to do every single task. That's you can't do that over here. Mainstream comics doesn't even do that. That's why there's so many of these bad mainstream situations. They don't even pay people good money as they distribute. So what makes you think you can with your $4,000 campaign? You can't. You can't change that industry. It's going to live or die by its own problems. But you can, over here, focus on making this book. It can be the big. Sorry, I didn't tell you what the small was. It can be the big, or it can be the small. It can be the 36-page, staple-bound floppy, similar to what you saw over here. But it can, it especially if it's small like this, it needs to have as few amount of people on it as possible, unless you're able to bring in outside money, unless you're doing freelance on the side or something like this in order to pull in funds and subsidize the cost of this campaign so that you can have a Big Tent look and feel, which is what I'm doing for Wild Tales. So that's the video. Let's, now that I mentioned Wild Tales, can't show that. Spoilers. Let's go to the pre-launch page, and soon I'll be able to show you everything. Right now, I can just show you this. So we've got multiple stories written, or at least or co-written by myself. I'm kind of managing editor for a couple of these, and directly writing a couple others, and it's all told within the Kyrie universe, but it's done with different art styles. So this is me listening to you lovely fans. I got a lot of amazing feedback on the Kyrie books. Kyrie books 1 and 2 so far. We're halfway through that epic story. I need time to be drawing those. So for book 3, I'm about a third of the way through drawing that. Book 2 was great. People liked the art. They had to get over. They said it was weird, and they had to get used to it. That's if they gave it a chance. There's a lot of people who didn't give it a chance. It just wasn't for them. So it's entirely understandable. So this is me doing the ideal, right? Because that I can sell this 128 page book or 152 page second book for $20. You can't do that in a bullpen format. You can do it in indies, and you can do it in under 10K easily, which is what I've been doing for 2 books so far here. But I'm doing something else here. I'm kind of subsidizing with some freelance work and getting a lot of this. Most of the comic is already done up front, and I'm coloring all of it because I'm a big boy. I can color. People liked the coloring. They didn't like, there's controversy, I guess, about my inking skills It's up and down, but or my drawing skills, I should say, as an indie artist. But people like the colors, they like the story a lot. So if I'm involved in the story for these short stories, set still within the Kyrie universe with a lot of the same characters, but it's drawn by different people, and I'm coloring, I'm providing that, and I'm a big boy, so I can letter my own comics too. Then I can save people money. I can give people what they do like about Kyrie. I can give them more of what they do like and give them less of what they don't like, and I can put something together and not have to worry about drawing every page while I'm in the meantime drawing Kyrie book 3 for you. So that's kind of the fun sort of thing. Oh, and I'm giving people more action. All these stories are action packed. So Kyrie also has a lot of pensive moments, which are fun, which is some of my, I think my favorite comics are comics that have a healthy dose of character moments. But I give you character moments in all 4 of these stories, but it's in the middle of action. So I wanted to show that I could direct action well. So that's the pitch. There's a link in the description for, you saw some of my freelance, for the sign up. I hope you check this out. Thanks again to Patreon backers for helping me out. This video goes out to you guys. It goes out to everyone, but it's I'm shouting out to you guys for your support, and let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. I'll do a whiteboard every month. Thanks. Talk to you guys later.